Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The men and women of Headquarters, United States Air Forces Europe, Air Forces Africa, pay special tribute to Brigadier General Thomas L. Ayers upon his retirement from the United States Air Force after more than 31 years of faithful service. The presiding officer for today's ceremony is the Deputy Commander of the United States Air Forces Europe, Air Forces Africa, Major General Timothy Fay. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand. Please remain standing for the singing of the German and American national anthems by Airman First Class Linda Kazul and the invocation by Chaplain James Brigadier.
Einigkeit und Recht und Freiheit für das deutsche Vaterland. Deine Glasst uns alle streben, brüderlich mit Herz und Hand. Einigkeit und Recht und Freiheit sind des Glückes Unterpfand. Dieses Glückes, liebe deutsches Vaterland. Im Glanze dieses Glückes, liebe deutsches Vaterland. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Well, team, before I offer up the prayer for the Ayers family, I invite you to commemorate this event, this milestone for the Ayers family, according to the dictates of your conscience. And please, Remember airmen and our allies that are standing in harm's way this very moment. Gracious God, in spite of our VUCA tendencies, or because of them, I thank you for loving us. Thank you for Brigadier General Ayers, a citizen airman who did not shy away from a broken world 16 years ago, who walked on the Mountaineer campus and said, "Here I am to serve," who piloted a Starlifter and extender, who said yes to love and Patty. Continue to bless and sweeten Tom and Patty's union. May Sarah, Amanda, Christina, and Tommy keep the family business going, serving their neighbors, serving their nation and her allies. Bless the Ayers clan in the days ahead. Bless our nation and our allies. Let the spring of justice and peace overtake this long winter of extremism and deterrence. If we must wait, however, then guard us and guide us till your warmth dawns upon us. I pray this in your saving name. Amen.
Thank you, Airman Kazul and Chaplain Branningham. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. We would like to recognize our distinguished guests in attendance. Brigadier General Ayers' wife, Patty Ayers, and their daughter, Sarah. And joining us via Skype, the Ayers children, Amanda, Christina, and Tommy. The Commander, United States Air Forces Europe, Air Forces Africa, General Todd D. Walters. The Director of Operations, Strategic Deterrence, and Nuclear Integration, Major General John Thomas. Chief of Staff, Headquarters, United States Air Forces Europe, Air Forces Africa, Brigadier General Christopher Craig. The Director of Plans, Programs, and Analysis, Brigadier General Dieter Bareis. The Director of Logistics, Engineering, and Force Protection, Brigadier General Roy Augustin. We also welcome all senior officers, commanders, chiefs, first sergeants, co-workers, friends, and family. And now, ladies and gentlemen, General Fay.
All right, Zapper, great. Boss, General Walters, fellow general officers, colonels, chiefs, first sergeants, everyone, thank you for joining us here today as we celebrate 31 and a half years of service to our nation by just a great American. And Tom, I can't tell you how humbled and appreciative I am that I get to be here and enjoy this family celebration with you. So pretty awesome. So there's formal parts of a retirement ceremony and there are informal parts. So this is the informal part. So everyone breathe. We're going to relax. We're going to have a little bit of a good time. We're going to have a little bit of fun. We're going to do it at Tom's expense because he's earned this after 31 and a half years. Okay. So we're going to have a few laughs, Tom, as we go through this. And it's pretty good. But before we do this, I'm just going to kind of lay out the rules of engagement here really quickly. The way we generally do a retirement ceremony is we usually kind of walk through, an individual's career and kind of remember all the great things he's done for our Air Force. And over 31 and a half years, it's absolutely an amazing story, Tom. And we're going to do that. And the reason we do that is a little bit of inspiration for those that are following in your footsteps that you've paved the way for, to set the example for. And then it's also for your family, because 99% of the time, and absolutely 100% in this case, he is such a humble airman that he has probably told you about 1% of the things that he's done in his career. So we're going to make sure that you understand the great things he's done, not just for our Air Force, but for our nation, and how awesome your husband and dad is, because he is an amazing guy. So we're going to do that. But before we do that, we got to give credit where credit's due. And he gets all the glory today, right? But this is really all the honor is right here, all the credit is right here. All right, your family has been with him every step of the way, and every single one of his successes is due to the things that you have done. And like I said, he's getting all the glory, but you're getting all the credit, and all of us recognize that, Patty. And I just want to make sure that you and Sarah and Amanda, Catherine and Tommy all understand that we appreciate how much you have sacrificed for our nation, so thank you. Also want to hit very quickly Tom's mom, Virginia, who's also on Skype. This is kind of a millennial retirement, isn't it? I mean, you're showing us how you're in kind of with the young crowd, kind of harassed doing the Skype thing with the retirement. His mom is not just an Air Force mom, she's also an Air Force spouse. So Tom's dad served for 24 years. And so I just want to recognize them and talk about family of service, right? We're talking about Tom today, but he's got a relative who served on the battlefield at Gettysburg. The grandfather that was with the 101st on D-Day. The father who served 24 years in the United States Air Force, both as an enlisted and as an officer. He's got a niece that's a flight nurse, a nephew that's a C-17 pilot, and another nephew that's a West Point grad, and I think you've got a Marine that's one of your in-laws as well. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a family of service, and if I could ask you to give them a round of applause. I did mention that Tom's dad was military, was Air Force, and so he was born just down the road here in Bitburg, Germany. So he's kind of come full circle. How appropriate that he's going to retire here an hour and a half down the road from where he was born. And then he grew up most of his life at Andrews Air Force Base. So Air Force Blue was in his blood from the very beginning. There was almost nothing he could have done to avoid service in our United States Air Force, and he did. He joined us via our OTC out of the West Virginia mountains, as the chaplain already implied. He came on active duty service in 1986. For those of you keeping track, Mom, were you born in 86? Were you? Okay. Not sure some of you young guys. So, yeah, kind of putting things in perspective. All right, 31 and a half. But started at Shepherd Air Force Base in Wichita Falls, Texas, as a civil engineer and as a contracting officer. Tom had the opportunity to go the pilot route when he was at West Virginia. He was offered that route, but it would have cost him his scholarship. So he said, no, I need the scholarship, but I'm going to get into pilot training on my own merits, in my own time, in my own way, and that's exactly what he did. He hit the ground running at Shepherd, and one of the things I always love to do is go back to those very first performance reports, and one of the things I have always seen is it's amazing because they really reflect kind of the officership that we see in a person, and it's almost kind of eerie a little bit when you look about it. Tom's very first rating official, his very first supervisor, wrote that he takes initiative, assumes responsibility, and achieves goals with a common sense attitude. So if you took Tom Ayers 31 and a half years later, we could almost write the exact same thing about it. He nailed it because that's exactly what Tom does. He's a leader. He moves out. He takes responsibility. He takes initiative. And he just does it in the most common sense kind of way. He is money in the bank. And I just find it always just so humorous to go back and see how that character was with you right from the very start. And that's what carried you as an officer. It's what separated him from his peers. He got picked up for pilot training, one of only about 35 officers in the whole United States Air Force that got picked up, to go to pilot training. He goes to Del Rio, does fantastic, top of his class, heavily influenced by a 141 instructor that was kind of one of his mentors. And so he takes a 141 to Charleston Air Force Base and shows up at Charleston in 1990. And what you see develop in Tom's career is a pattern of combat, which probably put a little bit of stress into your world, a combat of rapid achievement and a pattern of just laudatory comments by his supervisors all the way around. So he shows up at Charleston in 1990, and putting that in perspective, Desert Storm, Desert Shield just kicking off, brand new second lieutenant. They kick him out the door immediately, and they put him right to work on behalf of our nation. He's first in line. They're settling into a new place, and bam, he's gone. 600 flying hours in 4 months, so probably needed an A3 waiver to fly that. Actually, I don't think we probably had those rules at that point in time. So back in the Stone Ages, before we wrote all those rules, and he just took off and did a fantastic job in Desert Storm. Rapid advancement when he gets back, from pilot to aircraft commander to instructor pilot to evaluator, and then to special operations. And there was 9 pilots in the entire Air Force that make it all the way through those hoops and become special operations qualified pilots. And that's the kind of quality he was. And he actually ended up kind of being the chief of Stand-Val, very first operational assignment, flying. He ends up being the flight commander in charge of Stand-Val. What that means in plain English is the squadron commander entrusts one pilot to ensure that all the others meet the standards And if he fails, the entire unit fails. And it never happens on the first assignment. And so this happens on the very first assignment, that Tom makes it all the way to be the chief of stand out in his unit. So speaks to his character, speaks to his integrity, and speaks to his ability to perform. And so what do his bosses write about him there at Charleston? Is his #1 flight commander, his top captain, his top 5%. Not bad for a first assignment for a young captain straight out of the chute into operations. He does so well at Charleston, he gets picked up for a crossflow in AMC, Air Mobility Command, and that's a big deal. At the time, that's kind of a differentiator. So he flows over to the KC-10 to learn that mission and become a well-rounded mobility expert, and he moves to McGuire Air Force Base, so moves up to New Jersey, where he's going to spend a good chunk of the rest of his Air Force career. He does same pattern, immediately shows up at McGuire and straight to combat, right? Southern Watch, if you remember the time, 96 to 2000, and then Kosovo. And so he is just motoring 100 miles an hour, doing fantastic work there. Same pattern, rapid advancement, instructor pilot, evaluator pilot, into leadership positions right away, and he just crushes it. Your bosses ended up saying that you were your squadron's top major, and the wing commander's top 10%, rapidly moving up. Now this is where Tom makes a family decision and makes a shift to the Air Force Reserve Command in 2000, because he knew that was going to be really low key and a lot easier, and it wasn't going to be busy at all. So almost immediately after he goes over to the Air Force Reserve Command and he's flying KC-10s there at McGuire, 9/11 hits. And so 9/11, Tom's a Delta airline pilot. He's in the air. He's flying out of LaGuardia, and he's on his way to Atlanta when the first tower, I think, gets hit. And he's on the ground in Atlanta when the second tower gets hit. And so he scrambles to get a ride. He puts together a ride, and he drives to Wright Pat, jumps in an airplane, and he's doing cap over New York City almost immediately thereafter. He's right back in uniform, right back in combat, right back defending the nation. He then gets looked in the eye by his boss and says, "You're it, you're going forward." So he's now the acting BO. He busts forward and he opens Doha, is getting that up and operational. And then they move him over to LUD and he opens that up. And he's a major, and they make him the OG at LUD as he's getting that operation up and running. So it kind of speaks to his leadership and to his quality and the trust that his commanders put in him. You're #1 of 37 majors, your OG's top major, top 1% in your squadron. Pretty impressive, Tom. Tom, of course, is now going to be a leader, right? He's already been a leader, now he's going to be a formal leader. He gets squadron command and he transitions over to FedEx in his day job, which he still is. So if you've got a package that's late or anything like that, he's just applying for it. The FedEx truck is still here. He gets a ride from them every now and again. But he's a 78th Squadron Commander. He crushes it. 3 years in a row, his unit's an Outstanding Unit Award winner. He ends up getting the Air Mobility Commander, or the Air Force Reserve Commander, rather, Outstanding Squadron of the Year for all of Air Force Reserve Command. And he's the #1 commander, his most gifted commander, according to his wing commander. Pretty impressive. Tom wraps that up. With 2 more years there at McGuire in leadership. He's a Deputy Ops Group Commander, and then he helps out over at the Warfare Center, a bunch of other #1s, a bunch of other accolades. And then he is a National War College selectee. So putting that again into English, we send about, I'll use some rough numbers, 10% or so of our folks go to our senior service schools. Only 40 Air Force folks go to the National War College. I'm a little, as a graduate of the National War College, I kind of think it's probably the best one. So Tom did really good. He got into the best school, and other guys around here provide feedback on that later. But very rare and a very, big feather in his cap. And getting into the National Capital Region and kind of learning those skills that he's going to need to lead our Air Force at senior levels is a really, really big deal. And then he transitions over to the Joint Staff to the J5, which is a beatdown. If you know anything about staffs, the Joint Staff is the hardest staff in our military to serve. The J5 on the Joint Staff is where we do all our political and military interfaces, and it is 24/7, 365, just a beatdown, and it requires a certain kind of individual who can walk that line between political and military. Just can't come in and do the, hey, follow me on the leader thing. You got to do a lot of convincing, a lot of negotiating, a lot of hard work. And Tom is great at it. And then he finished up with the Air Force Reserve Command, working full force issues before we got lucky enough to snag him. And we did snag him. And he was a perfect match for us. When he joined us here at USAFE as our A310 leader, jumped right in there. And he was a perfect fit. He had all the right skills, he had all the right training, and he just knocked it out of the ballpark. I know that, General Thomas feels the same way I do. We could not have done our job if it had not been for Tom. He was in the NCR when we couldn't be there in the DC areas. He was covering meetings. He knew the things that he needed to know, and he got things done. And I will tell you, there was times when we were crashing and burning, when he just carried the mail for us and got it over the airline. So he was just absolutely fantastic here. I think the boss wrote number 1 of 3. I was probably 3 of 3 in that category. So, and that was exactly right. He was tremendous here. He did a fantastic job for us. So, what does it take to be a 1-star in the United States Air Force? What does it take to be someone like Tom Ayers? I'm a numbers kind of guy, so I like to put them in numbers, and sometimes it's an interesting way to look at it. 5,000 military flying hours, 32 years of marriage, 331 and a half years of service, 14 deployments, 7 as an ops officer or above, 4 amazing children, 2 Bear Base openings in war, 1 Bronze Star, and a top 0.03% is what it takes to be a 1-star. Of the 1,000 people that started when he was a second lieutenant, 0.03% make it as far as your husband and your dad did, that your son did. Pretty impressive stats that you put on the board, Tom, on behalf of our nation and our Air Force. It's been an honor and privilege to serve with you. You left the Air Force far better than when you joined it, and I'm not sure the Air Force could say the same about you. So you look pretty good when you were 22. Just a few miles on it. Sorry, Mrs. Ayers.
Yes, sir.
But you've done amazing work for our Air Force and our mission, and it's just been absolutely an honor and a privilege. Thank you so much, Tom. This is where you get to join me, I think.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the medal presentation. Attention to orders. Citation to accompany the award of the Distinguished Service Medal to Brigadier General Thomas L. Ayers. President of the United States of America, authorized by Act of Congress, July 9, 1918, awards the Distinguished Service Medal to Brigadier General Thomas L. Ayers for exceptional meritorious service and duties of great responsibility. General Ayers distinguished himself as the mobilization assistant to the Director, Operations, Strategic Deterrence, and Nuclear Integration, United States Air Forces Europe, Air Forces Africa, Ramstein Air Base, Germany, from 9 December 2013 to 31 March 2018. During this period, General Ayers provided invaluable expertise to senior leaders on the integration and utilization of Air Force Reserve forces in the command's diverse mission sets. Additionally, he flawlessly championed United States Air Forces in Europe, Air Forces Africa senior leadership objectives at multiple events, including 2 General Officer Steering Group meetings, the 2016 Black Sea Air Defense Expo in Bulgaria, and the Dependence Education Council Conference in Arlington, Virginia. A superb statesman, General Ayers conducted bilateral talks with multiple nations during his tenure to include Germany, Bulgaria, Italy, Greece, Turkey, Great Britain, and France. His skilled diplomacy resulted in multiple memorandums of agreement and greatly advanced long-term theater partnership capacities and alliances. Furthermore, General Ayers' operational expertise while serving in various strategic leadership roles during major command-wide exercises, to include Judicious Response 2015 and Austere Challenge 2017, solidified tactics, techniques, and procedures for theater non-combatant evacuation operations and air power integration in support of joint fires missions. Moreover, his leadership proved critical to the success of air operations in support of European Command's robust response to Russian resurgence, which assured North Atlantic Treaty Organization allies of the United States commitment in Europe and halted further Russian aggression. Finally, General Ayers' guidance during the unprecedented transition of the United States Air Forces in Europe, Air Forces Africa, into a warfighting headquarters, streamlined support for 2 combatant commands, and met the Air Force Chief of Staff's strategic intent. The singularly distinctive accomplishments of General Ayers culminate a long and distinguished career in the service of his country and reflect the highest credit upon himself and the United States Air Force. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing while Major General Fay retires Brigadier General Ayers.
Publish order.
Attention to orders. Department of the Air Force, Washington, District of Columbia. Special Order ACG 00089. By order of the Secretary of the Air Force, Brigadier General Thomas L. Ayers is retired from active duty effective 1 April 2018 after more than 31 years of faithful and honorable duty. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. At this time, Major General Fay will present Brigadier General Ayers with the Certificate of Appreciation from the President of the United States. The certificate reads, I extend to you my personal thanks and a sincere appreciation of the grateful nation for your contribution of honorable service to our country. You have helped maintain the security of the nation during a critical time in its history with a devotion to duty and a spirit of sacrifice in keeping with the proud traditions of military service. I trust that in the coming years you will maintain an active interest in the armed forces and the purpose for which you have served. Those who follow your footsteps will draw inspiration from your commitment, dedication, and sacrifices made to ensure the protection of our American freedoms. My best wishes to you for happiness and success in the future. Signed, Donald J. Trump, Commander-in-Chief. At this time, we would like to ask Mrs. Ayers to please come forward. It is our tradition that every retiree receives a special retirement pin as a memento of their service. At this time, I'd like to ask Mrs. Patty Ayers to place the retirement pin on General Ayers' lapel, symbolizing the transition to retired status.
Push that all the way through if you want. Looks good.
The Chief of Staff of the Air Force, General David L. Goldfein, has sent a certificate of appreciation to Mrs. Ayers. The certificate reads, Certificate of Appreciation from the United States Air Force. In grateful appreciation, the United States Air Force presents this certificate of recognition to Pat M. Ayers for the commitment and numerous contributions that made positive impacts to the nation's defense. Thank you for the support which gave strength and purpose to your spouse's service. Given this first day of April 2018, signed David L. Goldfein, Chief of Staff. The Honor Guard will now perform the flag folding ceremony. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. For more than 200 years, the American flag has been the symbol of our national unity, as well as a source of pride and inspiration for millions of citizens. Born on June 14, 1777, the Second Continental Congress determined that the flag of the United States be 13 stripes alternating between 7 red and 6 white, and that the Union be 13 stars, white in a blue field representing a new constellation. Between 1777 and 1960, the shape and design of the flag evolved into the flag presented before you today. The 13 horizontal stripes represent the original 13 colonies, while the stars represent the 50 states of the Union. The colors of the flag are symbolic as well. Red symbolizes hardness and valor, white signifies purity and innocence, and blue represents vigilance, perseverance, and justice. Traditionally, a symbol of liberty, the American flag has carried the message of freedom and inspired Americans both at home and abroad. In 1814, Francis Scott Key was so moved at seeing the stars and stripes waving after the British shelling of Baltimore's Fort McHenry that he wrote the words to the Star-Spangled Banner. In 1892, the flag inspired Francis Bellamy to write the Pledge of Allegiance, our most famous flag salute and patriotic oath. In July 1969, the American flag was flown in space when Neil Armstrong planted it on the surface of the moon. Today, our flag flies on constellations of Air Force satellites that circle our globe, and on the thin flash of our aircraft in harm's way in nearly every corner of the world. Indeed, it flies in the heart of every airman who serves our great nation. The sun never sets on our U.S. Air Force, nor on the flag we so proudly cherish. Since 1776, no generation of Americans has been spared the responsibility of defending freedom. Today's airmen remain committed to preserving the freedom that others won for us for generations to come. By displaying the flag and giving it a distinctive fold, we show respect to the flag and express our gratitude to those individuals who fought and continue to fight for freedom at home and abroad. Since the dawn of the 20th century, airmen have proudly flown the flag in every major conflict on lands and skies around the world. It's their responsibility, our responsibility, to continue to protect and preserve the rights, privileges, and freedoms that we as Americans enjoy today. The United States flag represents who we are. It stands for the freedom we all share and the pride and patriotism we feel for our country. We cherish its legacy as a beacon of hope to one and all. Long may it live.
General Brigadier Ayers, on behalf of Headquarters of St. Avery, your friends, and your family, I present this flag as a symbol of recognition for your 31.5 years of service to the United States Air Force.
Ladies and gentlemen, Brigadier General Ayers.
Well, I told Scotty that flag folding ceremony was going to be tough. I can tell you, having flown over Afghanistan and Iraq at a KC-10 with 300,000 pounds of gas strapped to my rear end, that holds nothing to watching your own flag folding ceremony. It's just absolutely amazing. So thank you, gentlemen, very much. I wanted to start off actually by thanking my boss, Major General Ty Thomas. Sir, not just for being a fantastic boss, which you have been, and I don't have to say that anymore. But for a conversation we actually had in November. When I announced my retirement in late October, early November, we spent some time together on Halloween, as you recall. And I was getting ready to transition actually to another airplane in my civilian job, which I've already done now. But at the time, I didn't know what my timing was going to be, and I didn't know if I was going to get back out here or what my exact retirement date was going to be. And there was a part of me, quite honestly, was thinking about spurring the horse and just riding off into the sunset. And you set me straight on that, sir. You said, no, we're going to do this right. You're going to do this for your family. You're going to do this to celebrate 3 decades of service. And I really, really appreciate that. Then you dedicated the resources. Jim Messer and Scotty Wilson, Scotty put the dream team together and made this ceremony happen. And one of the better decisions he made was putting Senior Master Sergeant Select Jennifer Michaels in charge of this and her team of 17 folks. So can you please join me real quickly? This is one of my last ones. It's going to be a collector's item someday. She left no stone unturned and was actually in contact with me over the last 45 days or so. Not in an intrusive way, but to let me know how this is going. A1C Kasul for the German and American national anthems. Wow. As our 15-year-old daughter Christina would say, who's watching from the States, OMG, Dad, that was really something. It was extraordinary, so thank you very much. Those of you that may have showed up early and saw the pictures to music, that was put together by our beautiful daughter, Sarah. She is our creative one, and she is here representing the Ayers clan. Our oldest, Amanda, is watching Christina and Tommy home so they don't burn down the house while Mama's gone. Thank you so much. The rest of the team, there are 17 of you, and if I can ask you to please stand up if you were on the team. If you're standing, please take a step forward so we can all recognize you. So, to the senior leadership in this room, and there's a lot of it, I can tell you I'm very honored to have you here. I'm even more honored, quite honestly, to have been in your presence these last 4 years. Think about baseball. And, you know, the way that you have brought me into the fold as a part-timer, and the way you completely integrated me in your leadership team, I can't tell you how much that means to me. It's been a real pleasure to serve with you all. Absolute pleasure. And sir, quite honestly, the masterful way that you are reshaping air power in this theater is something to behold. It's amazing to watch, and I'm really proud to have been just a small part of that. Just a small part. So thank you. The cannon staff, is Anya here? She may be running about. Anya runs the Cannon Hotel, which is also the home for wayward MAs. And she has taken care of so many of us over so many years. This has been my home away from home, on average 7 to 8 nights a month for the last 4 years. And I'm just a drop in the whole MA train that she has taken care of. It's been extraordinary, and I can't thank her enough. The whole A3 team, I see 0 here. I guess Steamer's probably covering the phone.
PTC, sir.
It never ends. These guys are amazing. The whole staff is amazing. 3rd Air Force, the AOC. I'll tell you, I came out here as an 06 mobility guy. The only theater knowledge, quite frankly, I had was airfield knowledge of passing through here on the way to the desert, quite honestly. And I did some flying downrange in Africa over the years. But you all just kept me straight. I leaned on so many of you for these last 4 years, and nobody disappointed me. The breadth and depth of talent out here is absolutely extraordinary, and that goes across the active, the Guard, and the Reserve. It's just been amazing. Zapper worked all night last night in the AOC. He ran home, slept for 2 hours, and came in here to be the narrator. That's the kind of commitment you see out here with all of our airmen, and I am just very proud to have been a part of that. You know, when I sat down to write a few notes and obviously look at my thank yous. I then tried to shift gears and try to get my arms around and encapsulate 3+ decades of service. And it's a tough thing to do. It really is. But it didn't take me long really to realize that today is a thank you, one big thank you. It's a thank you to God, it's a thank you to my family, and it's a thank you to you all and so many others that I've had the pleasure to serve with all these years. And I look over these years with a sense of humility, a sense of gratitude, and obviously respect and awe for you all who make it happen every single day. It's been amazing. And you know, I've taken a couple of weeks to really deeply reflect on that. You do that kind of thing when the end gets near. Trust me on that one. You'll do it as well. And along the way, I kind of thought to myself, how in the heck did I get here? How did I survive? How did I arguably thrive? And how did I arrive at this moment in time? And I'd have to say, it really boils down to three things. First and foremost, I was dealt a better hand in life. From my upbringing to my marriage to my children, I'm a lucky guy, quite honestly. Secondly, I will admit that I have worked harder than most. Although I can tell you that service in our Air Force, labor of love is an under description of what service in our Air Force is all about. And I want to talk to that a little bit. Third, and equally important, I have been blessed with a liberal sprinkling of luck and timing and circumstances and amazing help from mentors over these many years. And this is that chain of 1,000 miracles that has to line up to make General Officer in our Air Force, to make Chief Master Sergeant in our Air Force, or for that matter, to make a 20-year successful career in our Air Force. I think I was dealt a better hand growing up, not because of privilege or wealth or influence. My dad was the first Ayers to graduate from high school. He came from Appalachia. And he hitchhiked to Lackland. And as a staff sergeant, he went to school at night, and he later went to Penn State University, got his degree, got his commission, and he retired at 24 years, as General Fay was saying. So there wasn't a lot of influence peddling going on in our house, other than the most important kind of influence peddling you can have, and that is the influence that my parents both had on my brother Jeff, my sister Pam, and myself. And they somehow convinced me along the way that I was destined to lead, and destined to be part of something larger than myself. And folks, that's what it's all about. So I was much luckier in life from the very beginning. I grew up at the most Andrews Air Force Base, as General Fay mentioned, and I can remember being exposed to the big wide world out there. I would ride my bicycle out to the flight line, and I kid you not, this is before fences around airfields. I would park my bike up against the approach lights, and they were about as high as the ceiling. And I would walk up the approach lights on an active runway, because it was about here, and I would lay on my back and watch the jets come in. They had killed my dad. And the heavies would come over me and they would shake the earth. And the F-4s would come in, like 60 feet over me. And I would think about those crews, and I would think about those jets and how they'd probably just come back from Vietnam. And so it left a really deep impression on me. I was lucky enough as a kid to see the presidents land all the time. My dad would call. And we'd go over there and see Presidents Nixon, Ford, and Carter land. I was there for all three administrations. And a lot of times they'd come off of Air Force One, and they'd run over to Marine One, and off they'd go home. Sometimes they'd come over to the fence and shake our hands, especially during election year. But I can tell you, these things leave a really deep impression on you. I can remember seeing, personally, Henry Kissinger come off of an airplane after negotiations with Hanoi. I was 8 years old. I can remember seeing some of our POWs come through Andrews. These were our airmen that were in the Hanoi Hilton for many, many years. So this exposure to this big world was already working at me. And in many ways, our Air Force was already influencing the way that I thought about this world. The better hand I was dealt with my upbringing continued actually into my adulthood. I can remember at one point, my folks came down to see us in New Jersey. They were actually coming to see their grandbabies. But I was a squadron commander at the time in the 78th Air Refueling Squadron. And the squadron, quite honestly, was going through a little funk. And I was having to make some really difficult decisions, real difficult decisions. And my dad sensed this. And he snuck off to clothing sales, and he bought those. And at the time, I was like, Dad, you got the wrong guy. I am going to retire as an LCAC in KC, meaning Lieutenant Colonel Aircraft Commander in the KC-10. I am not going anywhere. I've already achieved my dream. I've been a flying squadron commander. But he had a different idea. And somehow I think he convinced me over the years what was in the realm of the possible. And he didn't get to see it, unfortunately. We lost him about 4 years ago to cancer. But he was right in the end. The better hand I was dealt continued with my wife of 32 years. We met, believe it or not, when we were 15. And even though I was young and dumb, I knew she was the one. I knew it. And I have never been so right about anything in my life. Trust me on that. And I'll tell you, she has been our source of strength as a family. And she has been the one that has made sure that our children have the same opportunities that we did growing up, and they have their own jump start in life. And we are so very proud of our four children. So I think there's some flowers that I'm going to give at this time. This is a twofer. So as far as the second ingredient is concerned, the working hard part, I will say that that's been my secret to survival these many years. You know, I was not always the best briefer in the room, the best communicator, the best aviator. I certainly did not have the nicest hair in the room. But I have a way of not giving up. And quite honestly, that was instilled in me at a very young age as well. And you know, when it comes to service in our Air Force, there is no doubt that it is a ton of work. And I don't care what your rank is, what your discipline is, what mission you're involved in, we all know that this is a ton of work, especially in the last 10 years or so. But for what it's worth, you know, to have experienced all those amazing things, historic things, as many in this room have done, and to experience them with friends that you have for a lifetime. And as you get longer in the tooth, as I am, you begin to realize that those hard-earned experiences and the people that you share them with, that is what makes service to our nation so rewarding, exceptionally rewarding. And I have the benefit of stepping in and out of the civilian world. Trust me when I tell you, this is a calling. This is not a job. The other side's a job. Trust me when I tell you that. You're going to realize that when you leave. So that leads me to the last dimension, and that is the luck and timing and circumstances and mentorship that I've had from so many. And I will tell you, I want to zero in on this mentorship piece, because I think a lot of us are more senior in this room, and we know that we couldn't survive, and we couldn't thrive without that mentorship piece. And that has certainly been the case for me. And I'm not ashamed to admit there have been a couple of Tom Ayers saves along the way. When I was a lieutenant, as General Fay described, I started out in civil engineering. I worked in the design shop, then I went over to prime beef and worked in mobility. And Roy knows what I'm talking about. And that is the mobility arm of your unit. And we would go out in the field, and I had a gentleman who worked for me. His name was Senior Master Sergeant Joe Johnson. Senior Master Sergeant Joe Johnson taught me respectfully and quietly and behind the scenes how to lead people out in the field. He was an amazing, amazing NCO. And I cannot tell you how well it served me later in life. Major General retired Kip Self. Does anybody know? You know him, sir. Major General retired Kip Self was my squadron commander. He was a lieutenant colonel, 16th Airlift Squadron. I was a captain, and I was his exec. Kip Self was one of the most charismatic and inspirational leaders I have ever had the honor to serve with. We unfortunately lost him very recently to Lou Gehrig's disease. Colonel Jack Hildebrand, he hired me into the Air Force Reserves. He was a lieutenant colonel at the time, squadron commander. At the time, he probably had 6,000 or 7,000 hours in the KC-10 alone and had double that in other airframes, both inside and outside of the Air Force. He was just a phenomenal operational leader. Major General retired Bob Kenny, I believe he's listening in on Skype, sir. Gerald Kenny was a lieutenant colonel, I was a senior major when we went out to Doha. And he and I together, with a 5-ship, 10 crews and staff, bedded down Doha. We launched opening night of Afghanistan, continued to launch, and at some point we got notification that we needed to move. So we pushed crews forward. The jets took off that night. We rolled up our entire operation, put it on a flatbed truck, went out to this empty airfield called Al Udeid. There was nothing out there at the time. And then we caught our missions and we relaunched that same night. General Bob Kenny is one of the most phenomenal communicators and leaders I have ever had the privilege to serve with. Major General retired Jack Ramser, he's also listening in from Memphis, Tennessee. Sir, thank you for joining us. The single most influential leader I've ever had in my Air Force career. Then I look closer to home at these 2 rows and beyond. General Fay. Without elaborating too much, I can tell you this man went to bat for me in a major, major way. And he's a fantastic leader. He's smart as hell. And he is probably one of the harder working general officers I've ever seen. And trust me when I tell you, that is a tough club to be the hardest working in. Sir, you are a treasure to this command. I hope to God you keep moving because we need more leaders like you. Thank you so much. The whole leadership team out here has just been fantastic. And I can honestly say that total force relations at Headquarters USAFE Africa and throughout the European continent are the best I've seen in 3 decades. And that only happens, that integration only happens when it's made so from the very top, sir. Thank you very much for that. You have taken that to a whole new level already out here. So I've had a lot of people ask me, well, what's next for Tom Ayers? You ready to go? In all honesty, I'm not yet ready to go. I'm still working through that. Although I will tell you that the idea of having one full-time job is fairly attractive. And then I look at the flip side of the coin, and this is where the real benefit comes in, and that is the time that I'm going to get back with my family. So, you know, I'm going to spend a lot of time with my wife, Patty. We are going to go to some Duke basketball games with Amanda, who's in grad school there. We're going to go to some football games this fall with Sarah, who's in the WVU marching band. I'm going to catch some lacrosse games with my daughter, Christina, who is hell on wheels on a lacrosse field, let me tell you. She's an outstanding leader and just a phenomenal, phenomenal young lady. And I'm going to help coach and watch my son Tommy play baseball. He's a left-handed pitcher. He's 12 years old. He's already 5'4". He's going to tower over his father someday. He's just a fine, fine young man. So we're going to do that for sure. I'm going to spend some additional time reconnecting with family. I'm going to spend a lot more time on my farm up in Pennsylvania. I'm finally going on an elk hunt with my brother Jeff, who's listening in, with my brother-in-law Sal, who's either in surgery or is listening in, and with my best buddy Mike Hafer, who gets the early wake-up award. He's out in Seattle, Washington. He's a retired Mobility 06, and he is hawking the KC-46 for Boeing. So, sir, when that comes in the theater, that's your belly button. So, a lot of people have said, hey, don't look back, Tom. You can't look back. But I think that's physically impossible, quite honestly. I am going to look back. But it's going to be with pride and gratitude. And I will say we are beyond excited for the next chapter. And if I can leave you all with one last smidgen of philosophy for what it's worth, Tom Ayers' philosophy, and that would be to never forget who we are as airmen. In my humble opinion, as airmen, we are first and foremost innovators, because innovation is what set us on a collision course with the Army a long time ago. And it's what enabled us to create our separate service in 1947. And we're the service of Billy Mitchell, and we're the service of Jimmy Doolittle, who was an Air Force reservist, I might add. And we never really look back. I mean, when you step out on the AOC floor, as I had the privilege to do this morning, you do not see 240 tired years of doctrine in place. What you see is a lot of brilliant young airmen of all ranks, of all disciplines, thinking outside of the box and getting the mission done. So as leaders, I would encourage you all to remember that, and to look in your organization and figure out who the innovators are, and listen to your innovators. And as airmen, I would encourage you to remain passionate about your calling, because this is no job, this is a calling. And to not be afraid to challenge norms where you need to, because that's exactly what innovation has to do. It has to challenge the status quo. And quite honestly, sometimes that creates some sparks, and you can break some glass along the way. But I think it's important to look at yourself in the mirror every morning, realizing that you are willing and able to go to the mat to challenge norms as an airman. I think it's your responsibility. And if you're willing to do that, I would argue you've already succeeded as an airman. If you're unwilling or unable to do that, I would argue you're in the wrong profession. It's the passion for innovation, I think, that has to remain the core part of our ethos as the world's most powerful Air Force ever known to mankind. Thank you all. God bless.
The men and women of the United States Air Force are proud to have served as Brigadier General Ayers, and he will always remain a valuable member of the Air Force family. We wish him, his wife, and family continued success and happiness. This concludes today's ceremony. Brigadier General Ayers thanks each and every one of you for attending and invites you to a reception in the back of the room. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the singing of the Air Force song, Departure of the Official Flight.
Off we go into the wild blue yonder, flying high into the sun. Here they come, zooming to meet our thunder. That boys, give her the gun, give her the gun! Down we dive, spouting our flames from under, off with one hell of a roar. We live in fame, we're down in flame. Hey, no can stop the U.S. Air Force.
Clear?